Welcome to Biodynamics Level 1, Week 8. Seems like Shabana and Rafe have no questions. We're still waiting for a couple of students. You know the drill, guys. Just keep typing them in the window, and I'll keep coming back to you to answer. So today we're going to start talking about something called soft bodies. You may have heard about it if you've been researching on your own. Soft bodies are is the ability that particles have to deform geometry. So far we've been playing with goals, okay? And with goals, let's say that I create myself sphere. Okay, with goals we've been working, we've been attaching particles. Okay, the default behavior of goals is attaching particles to the vertices of the geometry, right? And wherever the geometry goes, the particle follows. If the goal weight is set to 1, right? This week we're going to do kind of the inverse scenario, where we again attaching particles to the vertices, but now this time wherever the particle goes, the vertice will go. And this will translate into the formation of geometry based on particle motion. Okay, so excuse me. That is what's called soft bodies, right? So I'm going to start with something very simple. Something simple, but I'm going to turn it into something more complicated right away. So I'm going to create myself this works with NURBS and polygons, okay? Either way. I'm going to make myself a polyplane. And I'm going to scale this up a little bit. And we're going to try to use this to recreate a water surface. And ideally, you will do this once we're done with the soft body conversation, which is 2 weeks, this week and the next. By then, you will be probably, we'll have all the information, probably even by today, all the information you need to recreate the water surface on the Normandy assignment. So far, if you've seen, there's a flat plane not moving at all. So based on the information I'm going to give you today, you should be able to go in and do something that resembles, I'm not expecting rolling waves or a full-on beach or something, but I would like to see some sort of water surface, okay, representing in that area. So that's what I'm going to start with today. So I'm going to scale this up. And if you analyze the situation, again, based on what I told you so far, we're going to get particles placed on the positions of these vertices. And we're going to deform the geometry that way. If we have a geometry like this one, okay, with so little detail, the deformation is going to be obviously not as smooth as you will expect, okay? You will get, you get what you get, right? You don't have enough vertices here to be able to deform this in a smooth way. So with soft bodies, you have to always keep in mind that the resolution of your geometry, okay, is going to translate into softer or smoother deformations, okay? More realistic deformations. I'm going to double check the classroom, make sure that everything, you guys, beautiful, Rodrigo's here. Can you guys hear me fine? There's no issues with connectivity or sound or anything? Can you please double check that with me? Any of you? Can you just give me a heads up? Okay. I keep getting this feeling sometimes that everything is, something is wrong. All right, perfect. So let's keep moving then. All right, that being said, then I'm going to take this piece of geometry and I'm going to add more detail to it. So let's go into this history for this, and then let's go in. I'm going to scale this plane, let's say 5 units. We don't need to scale it in Y, doesn't make a difference. And then we're going to add here 5 times more detail. Okay, I'm going to start with this. So it stays square. It's not mandatory, okay? The square divisions. That's just something I don't know, I like to do. So I mean, if you have rectangles, it will deform a bit weird. So try to stay as square as you can. So it's very simple, as you can see. So this is not a lot of resolution. It's not it's not going to be enough to be in a close up and get something really soft. But it's okay for my class, and it's okay to begin with. Once you have your geometry and you're happy with it, and that's something that you should be doing in advance, okay? Make sure that you're happy with this geometry before you turn it into a soft body. That's something that, because to go back and change it, you're going to have to redo a lot of things. So it's best to be happy with this. Once you have it, once you're happy with it, you go to the soft and rigid body menu. So far we worked on the particles menu and on the field menu. So right now we're going to move one to the right and we're going to start using the soft and rigid body menu. We're going to focus on this course and soft bodies. Rigid bodies, we talk about them on level 3 on the masterclass. So you're welcome to watch those videos and learn a bit more about it. So for now, if you scroll down to the bottom, you will see that is the create soft body option. Okay, go to the options for the tool. If you reset it, okay, excuse me, that's the way you will see it if it's the first time you're using this tool. Where the creation option, in this case, is just make soft. Okay, so I'm going to open my aligner so you can see what happens. Yeah, you can see I have nothing on my scene, on my outline, only the polyplane. If you make soft, it means that you're going to, like I said, put particles on those vertices. Okay, so if I hit create, you see that a particle system appears underneath my geometry. And you can kind of see them already. If you go to wireframe, you can see the green dots, I'm sure. Those green dots are particles. What is the difference now? The attachment that exists between the vertice and the particle is going now in the opposite direction as goals, where now the particle is telling the geometry where to go. And as you can see, of course, there are no, although the difference with goals, for example, is that there is no particle emitter, as you can see. So these particles have no emitter, have no parent. So something else to keep in mind. Doesn't mean that you cannot get fancy. Probably next week I will do something a bit more complicated with it. Doesn't mean that these particles cannot be emitted from somewhere, okay? But we'll leave that for later. Let's start simple. So that's just to keep in mind. So these particles are free to move whatever they want, and given that they're particles, then you can just manipulate them in the ways that you know already. For example, a turbulence field. Yes, I'm going to set the attenuation to nothing. And if you imagine, it will do this, right? So you get that kind of funky looking thing. What's happening in here? Well, like I've been saying, that these particles are moving and they're dragging the surface with it. There is no, this method, okay, is not that popular. This creation method, sorry, is not that popular because it lacks a bit of control. Right now, these particles have to, they will move in the direction that they want to move. It could be useful for certain things. If you wanted to do a piece of cloth or something, it could be useful. Obviously, having access to end cloth, doing cloth with soft body is not really that necessary, but it is there if you need it to. What I find more useful is a different creation method. So I'm going to delete the particles. In this surface won't be deformed anymore. I'm going to redo the step, but this time I'm going to use a different option. Okay, so instead of making soft, if you scroll down, you have two more options. One of them says duplicate and make the copy soft, or duplicate and make the original soft. These ones are the ones to go because what's going to happen is the relationship is going to get established, a goal relationship. So now you can see why I do things in the order I do them. I do goals first. Now you understand goals. Now we can move to this because goals are very important for the behavior of a soft body. So by using the second and third method that I have here, you will be making a duplicate of this geometry and either making the original or the copy a soft body. And you also have the option to create a goal relationship between the between the particles and the hard object. Okay, I'll show you. Let's say duplicate, make the copy soft. You get revealed these three options where you can, don't worry about what, you can duplicate the input graph if you need it. But here is, you're going to hide the non-soft object. Why not? And you're going to make the non-soft object a goal for these particles. And you have a goal weight like you've seen in the last 2 weeks. The amount of attraction between these particles and the surface that doesn't deform. So hit create. You can see now you get your original plane, which is hidden. You get your duplicate, which then has the particles connected to it. With a goal weight, in this case, if you grab your particles and you scroll down like we did last week, you have a goal weight of 0.5, which you can modify and treat as you want. gold per particle works. All the concepts from the last 2 weeks will apply. I'm going to connect these particles to the turbulence field. And now the result will be different. Okay, these particles are not completely free to move. There is a 0.5 gold weight on these guys. I could reduce it so I can show you a little bit of the effect. So with the particle selected, remember, go to gold weight. Let's go in and put that to 0.2. And you get this kind of motion, which it resembles a little bit what we had before, but yet they're not free to move into infinity like that was happening before. These particles have some sort of attachment. It's a very little, 0.2, okay, but it does work. What does it mean also? It means that I could grab my original plane, which was hidden, I'm just showing it, okay, and move the guy up here and have these guys follow. Just like we saw goals. If I were to hide the geometry, okay, the particles will be hidden, but if I don't show the polygons and you just see particles and I don't show you the geometry, this looks kind of like what we saw last week. Pretty much the same, what we saw last week. So my point with this is that start connecting the dots yourself, okay, all the things that we have learned so far. These surfaces are able to emit. Particle systems are able to flow along that surface. They're able to let go of that surface if they reach a certain goal U or goal V. They can have a texture where the particles can inherit the color. Everything we have talked about in the last 7-8 weeks applies. Applies not only for the particles themselves, but also for the geometry that is acting as an emitter in this case. So just you know, I think your success as technical directors will be your ability to modify and alter all these concepts. Okay, I'm pretty sure I've said it before, but I'm not teaching you how to do a specific effect. No, my intention is to give you the tools to do any effect that comes to you. So I have to obviously show you through examples, but all these things are part of a bigger picture. Okay, so your ability to remember all these concepts and use your creativity to modify them, and morph them, and mix them together. As you could, this is only week 8 of level 1. You still have to go through 4 more weeks with me on this one, plus 24 weeks of level 2 and 3. So obviously there's a lot of information, right? But your ability to be able to mix all these things together is what's going to give you all the tools that you want. As opposed to other regular, more common tutorials on the web, which are basically oriented to give you tools to do one thing. I don't think that's the best way to go. So I'm just saying that because you know the way this could look could be a million different things. If I show the polygons again, so there we go. So we got our mesh being deformed. I'm going to grab the non-soft object, which is the goal, bring it back to 0, rewind and play. We have that. I'm going to actually hide it so we don't get it on the way. And so we have that. Okay. So I'm going to turn this into a water surface with you. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a camera that we're going to use as a reference. It's not a necessary step. It's just something that is recommended, I guess, to have a bit of a always like the same point of view to be able to judge the changes you're making. And I'm going to make this a bit more appropriate, the scale of things. Okay, right now we have a very little plane. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this and that. And I'm going to make myself a new one. And let's go in and scale this guy. Let's say 100 units. That's about right for the example. If you're following my RealFlow courses, then you will see me talking about something called RealWave. And RealWave is very similar to what I'm doing here. Of course, it has, given the RealFlow software to do particularly water, then the tools are a bit better, but the concept is about the same thing. So I'm going to place the camera, let's say, in an angle like that. And we're going to use this then as our reference. That way I can work on perspective, but I always have a way to come back and Then I'm gonna keyframe the rotation and the translation. Perfect. So that's my camera. That's my plane. We talked about the detail, right? So let's go in and put in some detail in here. So let's say one thing to keep in mind, okay? And it happens the same with real wave. Again, if you're following that course, it will make sense to you. The bigger the plane, the more detail you need to put. That's fine, okay? So that already on its own is a step towards getting slow scene, but that's inevitable. But also means that you have more particles. So in a situation like that, I have 100 by 100, okay? So I have 10,000 particles on my scene. It's nothing. The particle count wise is nothing. You could have a lot more. This could get slow eventually if your geometry is subdivided too much. And that happens on real flow as well. It's the moment you start having, if you're not doing waves with displacement maps, if you're doing them with actual geometry being moved, that's just the price to pay. It's inevitable. Let me just double check on these guys. Okay, you all seem to be all good. So we lost Shabana for some reason, but hopefully she'll come back. All right, cool. So let's keep moving forward. I think this detail will be enough for the example. I'm going to turn this into a soft body, making the duplicate. I'm going to show you applications of the next option down. Okay. It might seem the same to you right now, but it's not. I'm gonna stick to this one. In this special case, it doesn't make a difference which one to use. Either duplicate, make copy, or make original. So doesn't matter. I'm gonna hit create. It's complaining that it has no what? Sorry, this is a stupid error here. This object has what? It has no valid geometry, or too many. No, don't pay attention to that. Just deselect the selected back. There you go. I think I had the shape node selected or something, so that's fine. It works. I'm gonna plug that turbulence field that I have to this particle, so we get the same thing. Okay, so we're gonna get a bit of something. Also, the particles are a bit annoying, in my opinion, to see. You know what they're doing, but because the focus on this is about the geometry itself. I'm gonna make these particles invisible. You have different ways to do it. You can do any method you want, but hiding them. Don't hide them because they don't get evaluated correctly. You can put them on a layer. Okay, you could go in with the particle selected, put them on a layer, and then hide them. Hide the visibility of the layer. That's fine with me. Or you can make them transparent. That's something I like to do. And the reason I like to do that is because I can always see them if I go to wireframe. Right, I cannot see them right now. So I'm gonna do actually, I'm gonna have both just to show you, but I'm gonna make them transparent, all of them at once. So I'm just gonna add an opacity, but instead of being per particle, I'm gonna do it per object, so all of them go away. So right now up here I have an opacity value that I can make 0. And these particles are not visible on shaded mode, but that's the beauty of it. You go to wireframe and you can see them, because sometimes you might need to come back and check them out. So I think that's a better way. Right, so you can see already what's happening. We have some sort of deformation. If we look through our camera again, the new one, the render camera, let's say, there is something. With the compression of the transmission of this video might not be so noticeable. I can always do wireframe unshaded. Let's see if that helps you. I don't know, maybe. It's a little bit of something. Actually, I think it makes it worse. So I'm gonna hide it. But I can easily amplify this. So how do you amplify this? you have to decide either you lower the goal weight, because remember the goal weight is what's attracting them to the static surface, or you increase the magnitude of your turbulence field. Up to you. Depends on what you want to do. I'm going to triple the magnitude of this field. And this is going to illustrate another thing I've been talking about for a while, is when I was saying before that, I mean, we kind of saw the effect on the rain examples, but turbulence fields are by default static in nature. Okay, so static meaning the formation pattern. Okay, you can clearly see it here, and you will see it even better now once I bump this up to 50, for example. You will see it. Okay, so this moves. But you can see that the waves themselves, well, I'm calling them waves. Okay, think of this as a water surface. The ripples themselves are not really moving. You have some vertices going up and down like crazy, but the actual surface itself doesn't feel like it's different. Like it's not. doesn't have a flow or anything. So the turbulence field is like this by default. That's why I always go into the phase and I add a bit of an expression. And in this example, in this case, like everything I've been trying to teach you so far, I would like you to set this up as a rig of some way. I think it's a good practice to continue to do this. So you will have a master control, and you will have a series of attributes that you will be driving from outside to control your surface. And this expression now becomes very important. You will see why. I do this every week. You have seen me do it many times, and I usually say things like time, and I usually multiply by whatever. Okay, let's say, in this case, let's say 3. You have seen me done this a million times. I hit create. Now it becomes very important because this is going to determine the direction of your flow of water in this case, or the direction of the flow of the turbulence field. And the number that I'm using to multiply, okay, this times 3, will determine the speed of that flow. So if you were to do a rig, okay, you will be making sure that this becomes editable from outside. So you will probably have a multiply by an attribute. This number will be an attribute on the locator outside, for example, to determine the speed of your, it can be a river, it can be a lake, it can be an ocean, I don't know. But this will determine the speed of the flow. And obviously the direction, okay? X is the direction in this, where this is gonna move. So right now, if I rewind and play this, you start to see a little bit. I see it, but you might have a hard time looking at it. I'm going to increase the speed. Okay, so I'm going to refer that in those terms. I'm going to put the speed to 10. And now you can definitely feel it, and you will see it even more if I go into my camera one and I do that. This feels like a, I'm not pretending that this is a river, but it does feel kind of like a river. It feels like it has at least a flow in this case. So that is very important. Okay, so which phase you use is the direction. The number you multiply your time is going to be the speed. The frequency of your field, okay, right now I set to 1. If I set that to 0.5, is going to be the amount of waves that you're going to get. Less, okay, as you can see. If I go to 0.1, you will get even less. So that's almost like the scale. You can see how it changes the look. You get undulations, okay, you get some waves. If you look at it from outside, okay, you have something. It's too much. So the frequency then of the turbulence field becomes the amount of waves. I'm going to put that to 0.25 for now. And now you know about the phase. Magnitude of the field becomes how high these waves will rise. So let's take that to 100. So you can see that with only controlling attributes for one source, one field, you can control the entire behavior of this. Obviously, there are other issues. For example, that these waves right now are moving only in one direction, only next. But now, given that you know this concept, you can go back in here, edit this expression. I'm going to do something on, for example, on the z-axis. You can do something a little bit different, so not as fast, or whatever. You can change the direction. If you want to change the direction and have them flow, right now they're flowing from screen right to screen left. If you want to invert that, you only have to do is just multiply by a negative number, and that flips the direction. Okay, nothing special there. So let's do that. Now we have in both x and z. As you can see, now we have direction on both. But again, you have to multiply and increase that value a little bit of the speed to see it a bit better. And you can put something in y. Okay, you can modify this as much as you want. Now, I don't like to go too high on the magnitude because then you see, hopefully you can see it, there's a bit of jittering, vibration all over. That is because the magnitude of this field is so strong, and the gold weight is also strong, and they're kind of fighting each other too much. It's better to go, for example, with a value of 10, and then going into the particles and release them a little bit, let them be more free of the surface. free to move. So I'm going to take my goal weight, which is another value you could put on a master control as well, and I'm going to put that to 0.3. So now they move. You see that the vibrations are less, a lot less. Okay, so perfect. I'm going to return to my render camera. This is not a course on rendering. If you want to learn about a bit about rendering, you can go and watch Igor's Intro to Maya course, and he covers Mentor Ray a little bit. But this is very easy to render as water, just by using Mentor Ray, the MIA Material X, for example. You can plug that in there with a preset of water, and you're done. So it's very easy. So let's keep working on this, make this thing look a little better. But right now, let me just show you what it looks like. Okay, so you have a flow, you have an amount of waves. Okay, it's maybe moving a bit too fast. I don't know. You will make it look better and better. I will probably increase the frequency of the turbulence field. So let's put that to 0.5. And you can also do what I do on the rain. Remember the dual turbulence field approach? One with low frequency to determine how many big waves you get, and one with high frequency to put smaller waves on top. That's perfectly valid on that example. So here we go. We got that. But another thing that happens, it's hard for you to notice, and maybe, is that these particles have no awareness of each other's movement. That will become very apparent once I do this. If I grab my frequency and I bump it up to 1, I'm gonna go higher than, well, I'm gonna go higher on the magnitude. So let's put that to 50. Eventually, if you go too strong, it will become very, okay, well, clear. But it gives you ideas. I'm gonna first, well, this is something, I don't want to say a mistake, but there you go. You have this. If you're doing, for example, a scene, this is, you will need a bit more work, of course, but it's the beginning of something. Let's say that you're doing something in Iceland and you need to replicate those landscapes of ice with big pointy bits, and or some sort of asteroid surface that are very, for what I understand, they tend to be very irregular, very peaks. This, you can use it, soft bodies, not only as a simulation tool, but you can even use it as a modeling tool in a way. If you have this surface, let's say there was something you like a bit better than this, and you're happy with it, you can just duplicate this surface, and you will end up with a deformed version of that. To do that by hand, it will take a long time. So think of that as well. Okay, keep soft bodies also as a modeling tool. Let's say, for example, you need to do a tablecloth on a table, for example, or a curtain or something. You could begin with a soft body simulation. Just let it fold and let it create the folding that it will be very painful to do by hand. When you're happy, stop the simulation, duplicate the geometry with no history, and you're done. You have already all that stuff done for you. So take advantage of dynamics, not only on moving images, let's say, but as a modeling tool, it's also valid. Okay. But my point with this part wasn't that. It was just that this shows clearly the particles are free. Each one of them has no idea what the neighbors are doing. Each one of them is free to move in any direction, and that's not very water-like. You want some sort of tension, surface tension, or some sort of awareness when an area tends to rise. It will bring particles that are nearby with it, right? And that's what this concept comes into play, is the idea of what is called a spring. Okay, so right now these particles are free. I want to find a way. Let's say this particle here. Okay, let's say, for example, that particle right there tends to climb. I wanted to bring in the neighbors with it, pull them along with it. So the way to do this is very simple. You will just select your particles. You will go to the same menu, and then you will go one option down. It says Create Springs. Go to the options for it. And a spring is what the name implies. Okay, so you will be connecting all those particles with a net of springs. Those springs, as the name implies, they will have a stiffness and they will have a damping, the ability of them to stretch and compress and lose energy as they move around. That is the way you do. That's how you do this kind of things. That's how you start connecting particles together. And it's actually what happens behind the scenes on the nCloud system, for example. nCloud system will have the same links, it's just not visible to you, but it's the same, pretty much the same idea. And then once we get to nCloud, well, you will have to watch the classes of nCloud on level 2, but then you will see it will make more sense to you. That's why I also leave nCloud for later. Another reason. Methods to create it, there's 3 of them if I'm not mistaken. Yep. There is the all method, which is all the particles will be connected to all the particles. And that, in a case like this, is useless because you will end up with, imagine you have what, 10,000 particles in the scene. So that particle 1, let's say ID1, will be connected to 10,000 particles. Particle 2 to 10,000 particles, 3, and then so on. You will end up with a mesh of springs so dense that it will probably crash Maya. And if it doesn't crash your Maya, then you will be never able to use it because it's so dense and so stiff that it's impossible. Okay, so I have an example that shows what you can use all for. That's not good for this. You get the min-max, which I don't like it, but min-max is you establish a min and max distance, and that's let's say the search area for each particle. So each particle will go through that distance that you're specifying in here, and it will look for neighbors, and if it finds any, they will connect each other using an all method. So anything within that range will connect to themselves. I don't know. I don't think I like the next one, but it is an option, right? So keep that one in mind. I like this one. I like wireframe. Wireframe is simple. It just does like crisscrossing from each particle. That's it. Based on the walk length. Okay, so in this case 2, meaning that it's going to do it in the 2 directions. So diagonal and vertical and horizontal kind of thing. This is the more appropriate way for the formation. Once you set these values up, don't need to worry about this. Honestly, you can change that later. So you hit create. Once you hit create, you'll see what's happening. Give it a minute. Okay, it takes a while. Okay, it's calculating, it's doing it. It takes a while depending on the number of particles you have. Okay, it's simple. It's just making connections, making links between all of them. And this thing shows up. Okay, you can see. I'm going to zoom in just to show you. Zoom in too much. That's fine. So you can see each particle has a crisscross connection. Okay, across and along and to the sides to the particles that are neighbors of them. This is a better way of deforming. Step 2, after you create the spring, is hide it completely. Don't worry about putting on a layer. Don't leave it visible because it's very taxing on your video card. And this is one thing that can be hidden. It will still work. So hide it right away. You know it's there. If you select the spring, then you have the attributes that you saw before when you created it. Stiffness and damping. You also have a rest length, but that's not really need to show that. But these two are very important ones, stiffness and damping. Stiffness, okay, like I said, the ability of this spring and the resistance it will have to stretching and compressing. And damping is once you stretch it, for example, let it go and then start to compress and stretch, how fast it loses the energy is this number here, damping. I'm going to go back to my render camera. Back to shaded mode and play this back and see if we see something now. Now these particles have connections, but still, okay, the links are very soft. The spring is very soft, so you can go in and increase the stiffness. One thing you need to be aware of, because it definitely will happen to you, is that if you increase the values of stiffness, I mean, soft bodies, think of them. Soft bodies are very. I mean, I'm gonna sound like an old fart, but I've been using soft bodies for 13 years and they have never changed. I said the same thing about the instancer in Maya. I think it looks like they did a little bit of an update on the Maya 2014, but nothing major. So it hasn't changed, but I don't think it has to change much. Right? Then it came, before it was cloth, it was only soft bodies, and it came Maya cloth. Those of you who have used it, you know it was painful. Then they make nCloth, which is much better, right? So soft bodies, I will assume that due to the nature of evolution, eventually will disappear. But I use them more than nCloth. I find them easier to use and faster sometimes. But I don't do cloth with it. That's the thing. But soft bodies have one problem. is that if you increase the numbers, for example, of the stiffness of your spring too much, or you increase the value of the turbulence field too much, they're very temperamental. Think of them that way. Okay, they just explode. The geometry just will explode in the scene. By exploding, you will see. I'm gonna make it fail so you can see it. There's nothing to worry about. That means it just became unstable. That doesn't happen with Encloth. You see, Encloth is a very stable system. This one is temperamental. A too strong of a collision could make it fail. You have to keep that in mind, that is a possibility. Right now, it's fine. If I increase my stiffness, I know because I've used them so much that I don't know. I mean, this turbulence field is a bit strong, and I don't know if I increase the stiffness, might make it fail anyway. But we'll see. So I'm going to take my stiffness to a value of 10, and I'm going to take my damp, and I'm going to increase it to a value of 0.5. Those numbers should be all right. So you can kind of see that the peakiness of the the noise that we're getting is getting a bit reduced. We're starting to get a bit smoother deformation. I'm going to make the stiffness to 100. They're going to have a harder time moving. This could break it. Let's see. No, it's holding up. So you can see that it's looking different. Okay, so they're definitely more. It's more water-like. There's a lot of irregularities on the surface, okay? That's just because, okay, you can see it in soft mode, okay, like this. It's not so bad. But this surface will definitely need more detail. No matter which software you use that does this kind of deformation of geometry, it will look the same because just the polygons are not small enough. This is very big ass polygons we have. But you can see that the result is much better now, even though we have that crazy turbulence field going on. Okay, so that's working better. I'm going to bring these numbers to a little bit of a better range, but this sends you already in the right direction for this week. Reduce it to 25. I'm going to do one more thing with you. This shouldn't be this slow. I did something on my scene right now. Let me just take a look. Okay, it is playing slower. Let me just show you what's happening. I'm pretty sure you see the difference of frame range. Okay, that it's playing back a lot slower. It's because I'm playing it back in smooth mode. Okay, polygons have like nerves. You can go hit 1, 2, or 3, and it will smooth the visualization of it. Okay, so I was doing smooth mode when I should be doing probably like this, and it will be much faster. So that's just the way Maya is. Right, so we got now this set to 25, and you will be working yourself at home. You will have more time. You will put more detail on your surface, and you will play with these values, and you will get something that resembles a water surface. But right now, the frequency of this is too much. I'm going to reduce it. 0. Let's say 6. Okay, that's much better. Maybe even less. I'm not saying that this is a replacement for other tools. Okay, RealFlow, for example. No, it's not, but it is definitely a viable option to do it. Right, so remember then that between the goal weight and the magnitude of the field, you will control how high this wave will go. So I'm going to put that to 0.45, the goal weight, so they will reduce themselves a little bit. All right, so this is more like it. It's flowing a bit quick, so this is more like a river than other things, but you know the drill. One more change I'm going to make before I modify this a little bit more to show you something else, and it's just changing the speed of the phase Z to, for example, value 0.6. You can use the noise, you can use the sine, you can use all the expressions that we've seen so far. Now you can see that they're going in an angle because I'm pushing them in the X and Z axis. And that's just causing that kind of stuff, right? You could put something in Y if you wanted to modify them a little bit more. Copy that. And you can just say this time, let's say +6 multiplied by so like 5 point. Okay, try something like that, and then you have on all three phases of the turbulence field, you have a noise, and that helps moving the waves a little bit. Perfect. So, with that being said, let me just check if you guys are doing all right here. Any questions so far? Quick check on you. I'm happy to hear that. if the reason there are no questions is because I'm explaining myself, then it's great. Although I like when you ask me stuff, so if you think of something. Anyway, keep going then. Rodrigo says good. All right, cool. All right, so one more thing I want to show you is, let's say for example you want to put your camera closer to the water, right? For some reason, right now my camera is away outside the water, right? So I'm gonna move it. I'm gonna frame 1, frame 0, and I'm gonna put it on top. And I'm also gonna put it really close to the action. So let's see where the water is. Right, so you can see what my water is. I'm gonna grab this camera and drag it right there. It could happen. I'm going to keyframe it. It could happen that a wave is gonna cover your camera if you go too close. Okay, so we're really close to the water surface. I'm going to increase the wave height by just reducing a little bit the gold weight on the particles. There you go. I'm gonna put that back to 0.3. So that's going to make the waves a bit higher. I'm just going to try to force a wave going on top of the camera. With the camera going underwater or something. That was close. That was close. They say that you don't want that. Okay? They say that you want to make sure, I don't know. Let's say that you do this with more time and more detail and better. And you get, for some reason, you get the camera going underwater when you don't want to. Or you don't want to have this bigger weights in front of the camera obscuring the view on the back. Okay, given that this is a 3D scene, you can manipulate all these things, right? If it wasn't real life, then there's nothing you can do. But that's why we do things in CG, so we can modify them. So I'm gonna try to move the camera even more, lower it even more. So let me see where I am. Yeah, I'm gonna grab that, move it a bit lower, and now we should see what I'm trying to say. So, all right. Okay, that happened there. It went underwater. Okay, that illustrates an issue. That's very popular on films with water in action like that. So I'm going to show you how you can solve a situation like that, and that kind of illustrates. You can do other things with it, but let's say this happens to you. Then using the concept of goals, we're going to fix this problem. So what I'm going to do is take the particles around my camera and change their goal weight. We did it last week with the tanks, with the waterfall, when particles reach a certain condition. We were using a condition last week of their goal V and goal U to trigger a release. Here we can do something a little bit different. What I would like to do is specify specific particles around here, and tell them that to stay calm, or that their goal weight is higher than the rest. Okay. There's no goal U, goal V involved, and how do I know? How do I specify? How do I tell the system that I want particles just here, for example? Yeah. I'm going to isolate the particles in the camera so we can see just those two things. Okay, so we got particles and camera visible. If you right click on your particles, right, you can select them individually, but you have to be on top of the particle, right? So, and now I can go in and grab particles, okay, of the system. So I'm gonna grab, let's say, I'm gonna be doing something, I'm gonna force something a bit stronger, but I'm gonna grab that section there, or something even bigger, that section, for example. And I'm going to tell them, I'm going to rewind to frame 1 so they're all straight. Okay. I'm going to tell those particles not to be deformed by the waves. Okay. So what is it going to be? But this, I'm going to use the goal per particle. On an expression, it's not going to be very helpful because I don't know the name of those guys. I could get it, but it's a bit of a pain in the ass to do it. It's better to use this. If you go to Window and you go to General Editors, you got something called the Component Editor. This guy is pretty handy for this. As you can see, it's like a spreadsheet of attributes of my particles. Okay, I can see the position values, the mass, the lifespan, and the goal per particle. Right? The goal PP, if you don't set it, is set to 1. And based on what I said last week, remember, goal PP and goal weight, they multiply each other. That's why we were able to change the goal per particle and release them from their attachment to the surface. I'm going to use the same concept. So, given that they multiply each other, goal PP and goal weight, if I want to tell these particles to stand still here, okay, I'm going to tell them to use, and I know the goal PP is set to 1, so what I need to do is select the opposite particles, the ones that I want to move. Okay, I don't know, I don't remember the goal weight value that I'm using. I think it was 0.3. So I'm gonna just try to remember. So I'm gonna shift select what I have selected right now. In these particles right here, I'm gonna give them, which I've already listed, okay, all of them. I'm gonna give them a value of 0.3. That's the value. Remember, I'm using for the goal weight outside. Okay. So fine. That means that these particles have a value of 0.3. If I shift select, my other selection has a value of 1. Okay. And if you remember, like I said, these guys, the goal PP and goal weight multiply each other. So now I can go back to my goal weight and say that instead of being 0.3, it's a value of 1. So what happens now? 1 multiplied by 1, the ones that I have selected before originally, is 1. Those particles are not going to move. They have a goal weight of 1. And 1 multiplied by 0.3, which I gave to the majority of the particles here, means 0.3. They're going to continue to move like they did before. So that way, even though it's a bit extreme, I solved the problem. You can, no, let me just play it back so you can see it. So here we go. So I'm specifying, it's almost like if I had a boat or a pier or something here, static, you can see they don't move. And the pattern starts from that point forward. So now I can have my camera really close to the action and don't get anything going up. Of course, you can see you can see the effect. Okay, I'm forcing this thing. What you will do in this case is you will probably go and say, you start a little bit. You select some particles in here, give them a goal weight of 0.9, 0.8, 0.7, 0.6, 0.5 until they reach 0.3. So you get a soft blending. Right? I'm just doing it in a forced way so you can really see the effect. Okay. Let's say you have something in the middle of the water that you don't want to. You don't want any waves. In real flow, it's called control points. Okay, so if you're watching those courses, I know a lot of you are. If you're watching those courses, you will heard me already talk about control points. This is the same idea, exactly the same. So if you go back, I can go in and specify, select some particles and grab, for example, those guys, and those, and this, for example, I don't know. Grab that. And go back to Window, General Editors, Component Editor. Grab my guys who have a value of 0.3. I'm going back and give them a value of 1, for example. Hit close. And now, okay, so if I go back to my wireframe, now we're going to get this weird deformation. I hope you can see that. Okay, it's very clear. Okay, there's a static line right here. There's a thin one right there, thin one right there. So it does respond to that. Okay, you can see it, it's a flat surface over here. So this is a very cool way to see, to combine goal per particle with this kind of situations. Okay, so perfect. Right, so I'm almost done. I have one more example, but I want to make sure that you guys, any questions before we end up the class? Let's see what you guys are typing. No problem. Let's see what Rodrigo and Shovana and Julius, you were a bit late, so I'm sure you have questions, but you're going to have to watch the recording. Tell me, Rodrigo, what's up? Rodrigo has a question. Rodrigo is asking if he wanted to take something from the bottom of the water, the bottom of the surface of the water. What else is typing? Let's see. Okay, so his okay. All right, so his question is if I wanted to get something coming off from the bottom of the water, okay, from underwater, breaking through the water surface, do I have to emit particles from that object to be able to see drips? Yes, of course, yes, you will. You will have to do something like that. Yeah, you will have to. There are a couple of ways to do it. We're a bit short on time, but I include them next week. But you could select both the surface, the water surface, and the object, and do something like intersection curve or something. I think it's called, which basically gives you a curve that updates every frame when those two surfaces are touching, and you can use that curve as an emitter. That is one way to do it. But the easiest way would be yes, to emit particles from that object, so it feels like it's dripping. Splashing water now. You might benefit, Rodrigo, from watching the RealFlow courses, the recordings that we have. We're also on week 8 because I do a lot of stuff like that. If you're interested in water, that's a pretty cool course to watch. So give that a try. Yeah. One thing, keep typing. No worries, my pleasure. One more thing I wanted to show you before I go is that this doesn't look that smooth, and you will have to put a lot of detail to get a smooth deformation in here. I want to show you right next to this. I'm going to make a NURBS plane. So create a NURBS plane, and I believe I scaled this one 100 units if I'm not mistaken. So I'm going to do the same thing. So width and length. No, that's not what I wanted to do. Sorry. Let's just scale this guy 100 units, and I'm going to give him the same amount of patches that I gave to the polyplane, 100 on each direction. Okay, so it's exactly the same. I'm going to place it right next to it. And I'm going to turn the NURBS plane into a soft body using the exact same method. Okay, so create a soft body, duplicate my copy soft. I believe I'm using 0.3 on my polyplane, so I do that. I create. When it does that, don't worry, you just have the wrong thing selected. Select the plane again, run it one more time, done. So I got a second particle system. Now I got a soft body right here. I'm going to plug these particles to the same turbulence field. So the conditions are the same. Same turbulence field. And I'm going to rewind my scene. And I'm also going to reuse the spring. And that's something that is worth showing you. I'm going to take the spring that is connected to this polygon, which is right there. Right? I'm going to open it up a little bit. And you can reuse a spring on other particle systems, which is pretty neat. So I don't have to make a new one. So that way, if you have set numbers, I mean, this is nothing, only 2 numbers to change, but for some reason you made a spring that is a bit more complicated, you could reuse it. I'm going to show you. It's better to reuse them. It's less heavy for the processor. So if you grab the spring and shift select your particles, you can go to soft and rigid bodies, create springs, and then you can say add to existing spring. You can see the conditions are the same. And you hit create. Now the spring, give it a minute, is going to exist also on the other side. Just still calculated, there you go. But it's considered as one spring, you can see. I can modify the settings of the spring on all of them, but they're 2 different soft bodies, which is interesting. They don't have to be touching. There's no, I put them next to each other because it's easier to show you what I want to show you. But they can be anywhere and you can reuse them easily. So something to keep in mind. I'm going to grab the particles that I have here and I'm going to also just make them transparent. I'm just going to put them in the same conditions, both. Per object and hide them. And you can see that it's very quick to do it. Once I'm not explaining, it's very easy. So there they are, exactly the same. Well, not fully exactly the same because I don't have. I'm going to do one more thing here. I'm going to take the particles from the polygon soft body, and I'm going to remove those zones that I made. So I'm going to grab all my particles here, go to window, general editors, component editor. I got all my particles selected. I'm going to grab them all, give them a gold PP of 1, and a gold weight of 0.3. So basically what they were before I did any changes. So instead of being gold weight of 1.3, these two soft bodies are exactly the same in as far as the conditions go. I'm going to save this scene just in case, because I haven't saved the entire class. So give me 1 second, please. So week 8. Right. So and I'm going to hit play, and we get deformations on both. Okay. But I hope you can see that the smoothness that you get on the NURBS plane is a lot nicer than what you get on the polyplane. Can you see? You can definitely see it in this angle. So this is a purpose thing I do. I teach you first with polygons, so you like them, and then you see this, and oh, this is definitely much better. Exactly the same number of vertices. To get this result with polygons, you will have to put too many polygons in there. So keep that in mind. So this one is much better, right? You put your camera down there, it looks softer than what this looks like, right? So that's but you can see that the direction of the flow, everything is the same, so everything matches. So try that. Okay. Did that last bit create any questions for you guys just before I say goodbye? Okay, Rafe is good. I'm assuming you guys, Julius, Shabana, everything okay? I lost you for a little bit in the class, but I hope that you're doing okay. Thank you, Rafe, for appreciate it. Glad you liked it. Okay, everybody's doing good. Okay, so assignment-wise, try to put this technique on the Normandy assignment, right? We created a water surface for you guys, but I would like you to try it. So give it a shot, okay? Try to put it in there to see the challenges also, because it's quite large, the surface. Okay, so you need to be smart and decide whether you're going to use one big patch for the entire scene, regardless of where the camera is, which is only at the very front, or you're going to use a high detail patch on the front where the camera can actually move up inside and outside the water, like you know already, and then use lower resolution ones in the back, or you're going to use NURBS or polygons. You need to, spend some time there thinking about it. Next week I'll continue on soft bodies anyway. We'll do a few other things. So with that, I'm going to stop screen sharing, and I'm going to say goodbye to those of you watching the recording. Thank you. I'll see you next week.